Hello everyone, this is Abuzz Soup and I am here with another video. Today, I will be reading a book that was written for me a long time ago. As in, back when I was in kindergarten, all the way through 3rd grade. Keep in mind, this book was written a long time ago, so there's bound to be some emotions in this. The Magic Garden, written and illustrated by Sarah Fritchie. Let's begin. Dedicated to Isaiah Higgins, the beginning of our game. Note, the first chapter or so was written years ago. Chapter 1, The Garden. One day, Sarah and Isaiah walked through the cool evening. They were best friends. As they walked through some trees, something strange happened. The world in front of them changed from a great big neighborhood to a garden. A wonderful garden. There were flowers, trees, and bushes everywhere. In the heart of the garden, there was a big oak tree. The two children walked over to the oak tree. Neither of them knew that Isaiah was leaning on a notch. All of a sudden, a big fairy appeared. She was glistening and pretty, a wavy auburn hair to her shoulders. "Why," she said, "why, there you are at last. Now I can pay attention to my kingdom." "What?" asked Isaiah and Sarah in surprise. "You, my dear children," the fairy replied, "fit the description perfectly. The description says, best friends ever, male and female." "What?" they said again in surprise. "You are the two children. I just know it," said the fairy. "Anyway," continued the fairy, "we must get going before I leave. I must give you a tour of the garden." She showed them how everything was done, where the notch was if they needed help, where they could go, leave, and enter. After she showed them everything, she explained that they had to take care of this garden. "What?" shouted Isaiah and Sarah. "Well, I can't do it myself anymore. I have to leave." "Oh, I need to tell you. In this land you cannot talk to anyone at all unless she is a fairy," the fairy explained. "But why?" asked Sarah. "Because you are from the outside world." "So?" asked Isaiah. "So they don't know your language. It is unique," the fairy replied. "What does English have to do with being so unique?" Everything, the fairy responded. "So any other questions?" "What if we forget?" "I forget everything," asked Isaiah. "Then the garden will die, and you will get sick. But don't talk about it. It hurts me. Now I must go. Goodbye." And the fairy disappeared with a flash. Chapter 2, The Checklist. Said Isaiah. "That was weird. What are we supposed to do now?" "Look," exclaimed Sarah. "Now look at the spot where the fairy disappeared. There lay a rose-colored piece of paper, presumably made of petals. It said, 'Checklist. Trees, flowers, animals, bushes, grass, magical borders. Also check for messages from me, the garden fairy.'" "Look, a checklist," said Sarah. And sarcastically she said, "Any questions?" Isaiah rolled his eyes and said, "Come on, Sarah, let's do the checklist." "Do the checklist!" She rolled her eyes and started walking. They checked everything out. But Sarah felt something was wrong. "Isaiah, do you feel that?" "What?" "There's something approaching the borders, and it's evil." Right after Sarah finished her sentence, she gasped and disappeared. Chapter 3, Gone. "Sarah," Isaiah screamed, and reached out to the figure that was no longer there. Then he burst into tears. After he calmed down, he went over and pressed the fairy notch. A scowling version of the fairy appeared. "What is it?" she growled. "Something happened to Sarah," Isaiah stammered. "She disappeared." Immediately the fairy's face softened. "So soon," the fairy sighed. "Tell me what happened right from the beginning." So Isaiah told her the story of Sarah's mysterious disappearance. Replied the fairy. "I bet it was the witch." Chapter 4, Prisoner. "Isaiah," exclaimed Sarah as she tumbled into the darkness. "Help!" For a scary minute, Sarah just fell through darkness. Then she landed with a thud. "Ow!" Sarah muttered. Then she got up and looked around. There was nothing but walls. Sarah was looking at one wall in particular right now because it had a different texture. Suddenly, cold hands touched her shoulders. Sarah screamed, and the hands put duct tape on her mouth and ropes around her wrists, and shoved her into a room full of light. Sarah stumbled forward. The hand's owner showed herself. "Hello, pretty," the old hag said. "You will go just fine with my collection." The hag pressed a button, presenting rows and rows of cells. Every cell had a smart-looking girl in it. Each one had tape on their mouths and were chained to a wall.
"Just so you know," said the head, "I'm known as the witch."
Then she shoved Sarah into a cell and chained her to a wall.
"Farewell, my pretties,"
said the witch as she hit the certain button. Chapter 5. Investigation. We will have to find the entrance she made into or around the garden. It will look like a big black circle, but it won't be noticeable. Look carefully. I summoned all the fairies and creatures of the garden to look for it. Now go, instructed the fairy. Start where she disappeared. So Isaiah started looking all over. 2 hours later, he found it. I found it! I found it! He cried. Now step in it, but before you go, you need to know something, said the fairy. You have to keep hidden from the witch and her henchmen. Be careful of Sarah, too, because she might accidentally let them know you're there, and then she'll capture you, too. And what would that would not be good. Now go. Chapter 6. Questions. Sarah woke with a start as the witch pulled her to a room and fastened her to a chair.
"Now," said the witch, "you will answer my questions or else."
Then she ripped the duct tape off Sarah's face and asked,
"Where's the notch that calls the fairy?"
Sarah gulped and said, "There's a fairy notch in a tree in the middle of the garden. I don't remember where the tree is unless I'm there, because I've only been there once." Sarah hoped she hadn't given too much information.
Said the witch. "We will check it out tomorrow. Now back to your cell."
Chapter 7. The plan comes together. Thump! Isaiah landed on the ground. He felt around and found a moving door. Pushing it open, he found himself in a dimly lit room. A curtain blocked almost all of the light. He was about to push open the curtain when he remembered what the fairy had said. "You have to keep hidden from the witch and her henchmen. Be careful of Sarah, too, because she might accidentally let them know you're there." He spotted a ladder. He climbed up it and looked over the curtain. What he saw almost caused him to fall off the ladder. Now there were rows and rows of cells. All of them had girls chained to the wall with duct tape over their mouths. None of them noticed him. Then he spotted Sarah. Her clothes were ripped, and she was struggling to free herself. Isaiah had a strong urge to go to her, but resisted. He got down from the ladder to come up with a plan. Then he remembered. Then he reached the ground. The bottle was labeled sleeping potion. I guess he found a bottle in that time. Perfect, Isaiah thought. Now I can get the witch to sleep, but how shall I get there? So Isaiah went back to the door he had come in through, and went back in. He felt around and bumped into something soft. It was cloth. Lots and lots of cloth. He threw each one into the open doorway and then took a look. Prom dress? No. Wedding dress? No. Wizard hat? No. Henchman suit? Perfect! Then Isaiah put it on and strolled behind the curtain. Chapter 8. To sleep. Sarah didn't notice the guard as he strolled past the rows of cells, but when he and the witch started talking, she couldn't help but listen. "Madam Witch, would you like a glass of water? You must be so thirsty after today's hard work." Wasn't that Isaiah's voice? Yes, Sarah decided, it is. Why, yes, get me a glass of water, said the witch. A moment later, boonk! The witch's head landed on the table, fast asleep. There was a clinkling of keys, and Isaiah walked back into the rows of cells. Chapter 9. Free. Isaiah walked quickly into Sarah's cell. He found the key that matched her door and opened it. Taking off Sarah's chains, he whispered, "Don't make a scene or we'll be in trouble." Sarah nodded and looked at her with the duct... And he took the duct tape off of her mouth. Then together, they freed the rest of the girls, and everyone crammed into the dark room. "To the garden," said Isaiah, quite loudly, and they were magically lifted up. Chapter 10. Home. Light burst into everyone's eyes. Sarah found herself being thrown into the air, but instead of landing on the ground, she landed on a soft pile of leaves. She got up and helped the other bewildering girls to the notch where they could get to the fairy. Immediately after they pulled the notch, the fairy appeared. "Oh, good," she exclaimed, "you're alive. Now here, with all the girls, you can go home and never have to think about this again." With a wave of her wand, all the girls disappeared. "Isaiah, you did more than I asked you to. And Sarah, you were very brave through all of this. I would like to reward you with these." And she gave each of them an icon with an animal in them. Sarah's icon was a unicorn and Isaiah's was a tiger. Tap the middle and you will become that animal. This will help you in a lot of situations from now on, but teaching you to use them is for another day. You two must be exhausted. Sarah and Isaiah nodded. So go home and take a rest, but be ready for the next adventure. The fairy concluded with a wink. The end. Alright, I think that this story was very good. And I'm going to skim through the book and I'm going to give you a look. The Magic Garden, written and illustrated by Sarah Fritchie. I don't know if you can see that well, but it's got drawings. There's Sarah, there's me. Open up the cover. There's the dedication page. There's chapter 1, the garden. We're just going to flip through every page, and I'm going to be silent about this. Might be backwards, I don't know. If not, then just hold this up to like a mirror or something so you can see it. There's Sarah's unicorn. There's my tiger. You close it. There's the author's name, Sarah Fritchie Books, The Magic Garden. The whole reason I decided to read this today, it was just like a 5-second decision. But I'm glad I did this. Because this book was written for me. I rarely ever talked to Sarah, even though we played every day. And this book, I will never get rid of it. Happy birthday, Sarah.